begins in 10 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Good luck.
Give up!
The control point is being captured. Alert. The control point is...
My mic was muted. You were right. I can't believe it. I thought some of the Twitch viewers carried over. No, you were being serious. It's alright, I'm used to talking to myself, so you didn't miss much. I just said I did my hair differently. People were acting like a bit fuzzy on what was going on with my webcam. I just got the buns up. Hope everyone's doing well. I'm just playing some Team Fortress 2, per usual. Yeah, you know. I thought of streaming Paladins, but I played one match of Paladins, and they were running a Yagarath, Yagarath, which is this giant like worm that they added into it. Paladins is like TF2, but I don't know. It's like Overwatch's fun cousin, basically. But the newest hero is just like a damage sponge. And I didn't really want to spend my stream shooting at a damage sponge. So, back with some Team Fortress 2.
We have secured the control point.
Am I using a controller? I'm offended. You would think that I'm using a controller with the amount of gaming prowess I'm withholding. I'm building up energy. I don't know what I'm saying. I'm mostly just waiting for someone in chat to ask me a political question. I'm not used to streaming. I don't know how many of you follow me, but I've streamed like twice in the last 4 months, so I don't really know what to do here. Been watching WandaVision. It's a TV show. Pretty good. Really weird. Very meta. Don't want to spoil anything. Not usually a big Marvel fan, but they like it's like meta enough that I can appreciate it on a like a creative level. Would recommend.
Our control point is being captured.
Meaning of life. So my perspective is, I think like the meaning of life is just so there's this thing called the Grace Gorilla stream, which is just like a wildlife stream of these gorillas, and they sit around all day chewing on leaves and picking bugs out of each other's hair. And I think that's what the meaning of life is. If you want to call that returning to monkey, you can. Technically it's a gorilla. But I think like our origin roots is just sitting around and picking bugs out of each other's, you know, business. However you want to, like, I feel like I'm yelling, apply that to the modern day. I think the modern hustle and bustle isn't what life's about. Like, I don't think life's supposed to be about, you know, working a 9-to-5 that you don't even enjoy, hoping to cover rent. Which is why I think we need to instate UBI so everyone can just spend their days chewing on leaves and sitting around. I think that's like the end goal of society. Just automate everything so we can kind of just stick around and watch anime all day. I think we'll get there in our lifetime. You give it like 10 to 20 years. Just hope the big businesses don't control the machines, because otherwise we're all gonna probably go hungry. I count that as an air shot. What anime should I watch? So I like to do this thing where I go on shady anime websites and I just find a random one. The last one I watched was like I don't remember the name of it, but it's this show about two scientists believing they fell in love. So they start running a bunch of scientific tests to they like run the scientific method on their love to see if it's real. It's about as Japan as it gets. I thought it was like cute. I think it was called like science hypothesizes that we're in love, and I'm gonna prove it. And you'll have to look into it. I only watched one episode, truthfully. Thoughts on comp TF in modern day? I play med. I don't know if I'm terrible. I just want the competitive queue to actually find matches. I'll go ahead and queue, and I guarantee you I'm not gonna get a match the entire night. But 6's TF2 is... I'm not gonna tell you need to like go pug or lobby or anything. I don't know what the scene's like these days. It was my favorite esport. And I'm hoping something like it comes out soon. Or not soon, but just eventually. Something that scratches the same itch that this did. Oh, hi, Scout. Would you guys care if I just like didn't talk for the next 20 minutes? Because you can see me in the corner, so you know I'm still here. I think I'm gonna play TF2. Why is your crosshair so ugly? Excuse me, this makes me play better. This is actually maximizing my performance by having a big green crosshair.
We have secured the control point. The control point is being captured.
Oh, hi, Mark.
Alert. The control
Talk about
point
your
is being
mediocre
captured.
politics for an hour again. I feel like I've already covered all my bases in terms of politics. Yesterday, or not yesterday, 2 days ago, I talked about the Capitol riots, UBI, socialism. Damn, I covered like 40 things, so you may just want to like softball me a question, and I'm happy to go on a rant. I know as a streamer it's my job to like come prepared, but I feel like you know me at this point. I was always a VTuber. Do you guys want to talk about the fact that the stimulus packages haven't really passed through yet, but we're bombing Syria? Because that's back to the status quo, as they say.
Our control point is being captured.
Also, I don't know if the person who was here last stream that asked about Israel and Palestine, I read a bit into it, that there's like territorial conflicts, and our previous administration was backing, so I'll reach out. I don't know how many gamers here know about Israel and Palestine. Apparently, Israel's trying to, encroaching on Palestinian territory, forcing people who live there to, like, demolish their own buildings so that they can, control the territory. I've read that there's issues in both governments, but Israel is basically just trying to invade the territory.
Point is being contested.
I just wanted to share that I'm trying to do my research on world politics. I don't really have a meaningful like takeaway from it though. Just it's unfortunate that the United States administration was previously exacerbating the issue. They were supporting Israel moving in on the territories rather than supporting like a democratic stopping of it. which is probably the most base level observation this streamer is gonna give you. It's not gonna get political. Maybe. UBI would just ensure rent prices go up since most people don't own their homes. Isn't that a myth? The myth that if you give people money, all the prices are gonna go up. Even if it does, I don't know. I don't know enough about economics to like defend, but I'm more of the opinion that giving people like money, especially at a time like this, is gonna overall have more benefits. I mean, that's just a theory that everything is gonna go up in price just because you give people more money. It's like it's a logical thing that would happen, but it's not like you're just. I was gonna say it's not like you're just printing more money and then giving it to people, but like that could be the situation. But even if it was, that's not necessarily a bad thing. If the government's handling it, like that's. Just gonna go silent and organize my feelings for a moment. I don't know. That sounds like fear-mongering to me, saying like we shouldn't try it just because something bad might happen. Yeah, something bad might happen if you walk out your front door, but you still got to do it. Establish a rent ceiling. I like the sound of that sentence. Housing is a major issue in America to begin with, so I wouldn't mind having a bit more regulation on how much we're what's the word? Charging people to live in spaces. Like, you could implement UBI and not hike up all of the rent prices, too. Rent ceilings are very bad. Are they? Would you like to educate me on it? Because it's not really a field I'm that familiar with. Climate change scares me too much to focus on anything else. It's like a major issue that needs to be at the forefront of our politics, but the problem is we're in the middle of like something that requires attention far more than climate change. Although ironically, everyone working from home has helped climate change because people aren't commuting to work quite as much, so less cars on the road. So in a way, we've actually helped the climate change issue by working from home. And a lot of businesses have found that, and a lot of workers have found that they can work from home just fine and they don't need to go into the office. So even if after the pandemic, epidemic, whatever you want to call it, even if afterwards a lot of people chose to work from home, it would be like good overall. Yeah, climate change is a major issue. I'm concerned that the status quo doesn't want to fully commit into like electric vehicles, doesn't want to fully commit to phasing out fossil fuels. Nuclear energy, I feel, is something that could be expanded on. Like, I loved Bernie. He wasn't a fan of nuclear energy. I think it's clean energy. There's like a lot of bad reputation with it. Just because people think, you know, like, I don't want to have a nuclear energy facility in my city or town. But as long as they're well run and all of the precautions are in place, it's actually relatively safe. I don't know that much about wind energy. I don't know like how viable that is as a replacement. What I like the idea is putting solar panels on everyone's roofs. That way everyone just has access to electric energy. Then if you like could slowly get everyone driving electric cars, like over the course of 20 years, everyone could charge their electric cars at home, and you could just phase out fossil fuels. Too expensive. I don't think it's too expensive. I don't have the numbers on hand, but it's pretty viable to implement solar panels on roofing. But it's just like, where do you go from a, I don't know, a policy standpoint to implement that kind of thing? Especially when there's just so much else going on right now. It's hard to, I think, to convince everyone to get on board with that. But yeah, I agree. It's better in the long run. Yeah, I get it's unfair for me to say it shouldn't be expensive but not have the numbers to back it up. That's me saying, like, when I looked into it, it seemed viable, but I don't have the citations to, like, convince anyone here on it. All I know, like, I feel like we all can agree fossil fuels isn't the long-term solution. And from that, you can kind of agree that a alternative is necessary. I'm just explaining what my, like, my favorite ones are.
The control point is being captured.
It's expensive to acquire solar panels, but in the long term, it works out cheaper. Yeah, that sounds like what the situation would be. Like, it would be very expensive to implement, but, you know, 40, 50 years down the line, it would start paying itself off. Plus, we wouldn't have to be fighting wars for fossil fuels overseas, which would be a great benefit. We could pull out our military presence in countries that we don't need to be in. That's just another benefit from getting off of fossil fuels. Read your donations. Sorry, I see them pop up, but I don't always look at them. Real question here. Do you think that fully automating every single essential workplace will result in a positive or negative state of humanity? I think it depends on the policies we do surrounding that. So automating our entire workforce is a good thing. As long as we put in the precautions to, like... I talked a bit about this last stream. As long as people still have income. So if you automate the workforce, but initiate UBI so everyone still makes money and can cover their rent, then I see automation as a good thing. My big thing is I don't want automation to be in the hands of the free market or, like, corporations. Because if every corporation just chooses to automate their own workforces, they're just going to cut everyone off of their jobs. They're not going to hire human employees anymore, and then everyone's just going to be left waiting for government handouts. And I know some people want small government, and they don't want to have the government give everything to the people. But just the nature of automation, you're not going to want factory workers when a couple machine arms do it better than a person, you know? Just objectively, you're gonna have zero reason, and you can't force big businesses to hire humans just because the economy necessitates it. Like, the part of the free market is, like, corporations have the right to have an automated workforce. I guess maybe that's just me, like, reading into it, but. Like, all factory jobs will probably be automated. I think a lot of benign, like, a lot of clerical work, like doing calls, is already being automated. Shit like the fast food industry, like flipping hamburgers, all of that's going to be automated in our lifetime. So where are the people that don't go to college going to find work? Where are the people that do go to college but can't find work because... all of the coding and scripting jobs get automated in 30 years by, you know, GPT-5 that can code itself. I think, like, maybe we'll have... I think there'll be a lot of tech jobs of people assisting AI, like AI-assisted tech jobs. Or, like, a symbiotic relationship with automation. But I still think we're going to have to step in at some point. And have our government, like, help people out in ways that our government is not comfortable doing right now. Just the grind busy work. Well, I mean like a majority of the workforce, just like floor level jobs are going to be automated. I even imagine like CEO work is going to be all automated in the future. Maybe not literal CEOs are going to want to keep their what is it, their money, but like a lot of the management work is probably going to be automated at some point. Why wouldn't it? I don't see any reason why a computer couldn't do any of the management or the physical labor that a human can. Also, yeah, CEO work is a funny oxymoron. I didn't really talk about the Syria shit. I just know that Biden gave the okay to to drop bombs in Syria, and I know it wasn't necessary. It was in retaliation. It was like citation needed. It was like basically sending a message in response to something some people in Syria were doing. They attacked somewhere, and we dropped bombs to like send a message, but it wasn't actually a necessary retaliation. It wasn't like assassination work. It was just the US dropping bombs overseas for no good reason other than just exerting power. All while we have all of our own domestic issues that our government refuses to, or not refuses to, but is arguing internally about doing. The GOP, per usual, refusing to sign on to anything involving the stimulus. We're trying to cut the budget as much as possible. Whatever happens, humans are more talented because they're the ones that made the robots. Yeah, but robots are self-improving, and once the robots catch up to us, they're going to be able to outpace us at like virtually all levels. There are already like deepfake faces and deepfake voices, right? So what happens when you can just deepfake a personality and then every YouTuber just gets turned... all the biggest YouTubers just become, you know, Hatsune Miku kind of people. Hell, maybe you're watching one right now. Maybe I'm not even a real person. You're just watching a bot take over FUNK's stream. What do you do then? What do you do when the entire entertainment industry has been automated? I've thought about that once. I wanted to put every video script I've ever written together into some sort of neural network that would be able to spit out a new script for me. I wanted to find a neural network that could write funk-esque video game scripts, like essay scripts. I couldn't find anything that was up to snuff with like the quality I would want, but I think one day I'll get there. So if I ever like automate my my videos, you'll know why. Just because it does it better than me. Art can't be automated. I disagree. If you teach, there are already neural AIs that have been like taught to spit out. Love that sound. To spit out art. There's already been AI art that's sold at high dollars. I don't have like an example, but you give it like 10 years, it's gonna happen. It's easy to look at the state of it now and say like, you can't possibly create art. I wish I could give more specific examples. I haven't really done my research. But you can teach a language algorithm how to write comedy. You can teach a art algorithm like the basics of, you know, the golden ratio. It just needs to learn how to abstractly make its own. That isn't just based on other people's stuff. I saw someone made an art critiquing AI. Like you could feed it pictures of human-made art, and it could describe the emotions it elicits. Like, this is a very sad image that makes me feel alone. Stuff like that. So AIs already understand what art is. They just don't totally understand how to make it themselves. This isn't relevant, but I think there are a couple of like cases of people giving monkeys canvases and paintbrushes, and they just splatter painted, and it's sold. So what I'm saying is, if an animal that hasn't evolved to have art, and if an animal that's below human intelligence can make something we consider art, I don't see why a computer can't. If like a Animal Kingdom thing can. This is a pretty standard crosshair. I don't see why everyone's making fun of me for it.
Prepare to compete in 30 seconds.
What if robots could feel a synthetic emotion they produce out of neural networking and creating a language that humans couldn't understand? I think they already do that. Well, at least there are some like tests of like putting two AIs together, and they like use abbreviations that they weren't taught to use. Like they create their own languages to communicate with each other. It's really basic level. It's not, you know, HAL 3000, but it's gonna happen. That was one big thing I've read about philosophically. Like, we can teach a computer to code in the languages we've created, but what happens when a computer gets so smart it just makes its own coding language? And, like, it can teach us how to use it, but it's gonna be coding in that language faster than any of us can. Like, I imagine the first AI that pops awake, it's probably gonna, like, scrap whatever jerry-rigged code we write it on and just make its own.
3, 2, 1.
Humans are neural networks. They're called neural networks because they function like our own brains. Yeah, I agree with that. There's there's different ways that you can go about creating a quote-unquote AI. There are ones where it's like you study the human brain and try to recreate it in a digital simulated setting. There are ones where you just do it from scratch, not based off the human brain, but just like based off of logic. I'm not a coder, so I can't explain it super well, but the human brain is in itself kind of comparable to what will probably eventually be AI. I was reading something about liquid neural networks. So instead of it being on, I don't know, like a static system of, I can't explain this. Sorry, I was about to sound super smart, but I'm cutting myself off before I sound dumb. AI is just very let's just say there's like a dozen ways you can go about making an intelligent computer and leave it at that. Liquid computers. Well, the reason I brought it up is because our brains are kind of the result of liquid sloshing around inside there, our synapses. So logically, you could simulate that on a computer. And what's the difference between a simulated brain sloshing liquids and a physical brain sloshing liquids? I know there's not much of a takeaway from that, but I guess what I mean is, like, maybe the VTubers that come to life in 20 years, maybe they will be real people. You can, like, pop on your VR goggles and just meet with them. They can do, like, autograph signings. Someone's gonna make Hatsune Miku real. Just realized that. They're gonna kick my co-pilot. I'm not even wearing it right now. I'm glad that didn't pass. Technology isn't close to emulating a personality. It won't be for hundreds of years. You're like the people that thought we would be living in Mars by the year 2000 because we reached the moon in '69. What do you mean? It's already pretty good at emulating a personality. Like, if you read up on GPT-3, like, if you just play AI Dungeon, it's not like a long-term personality. It's like more storybook, like really flanderized. But like, technology can already simulate the human language. It's just, it doesn't really have good long-term memory. but you can scale up the models to the point that you can scale up a model that it'll I don't know. I know it's optimistic thinking, but I think technology will be able to encroach on human territory within 80 years. I don't think that's outlandish. I'm trying to think. I've already seen an example of it. There. Sorry, I'm out of practice streaming, so. There's this one specific example of a physical, like, lady bot that has, like, a personality model in it, and it's supposed to help people during the pandemic. Like, I think it's rolling out in Japan or something, where it's just like this... It's really uncanny. It has a human face, but the back of its head is all wires, and it just rolls around on wheels. And it can make, like, basic conversation with people. It's not, like, sentient or alive by any means, but it could definitely fool the average person for, like, a minute or two. Well is underrated, by the way. I used to think this was, like, a really bad map. But I've realized the sniper angles are pretty fair. When you get to last, pushing well last, it feels more fun than pushing the average 5 CP map. Don't know how I'm gonna wrap that back into AI, but I just thought I would interject my opinion there. AI can currently be only useful for particular tasks if provided millions of billions of parameters to that effect. GPT-3 is an example and can be used to generate code and stories. Yeah, but the thing is, GPT-3, to my knowledge, was basically a test to see if they could keep adding on parameters and scaling up the model and seeing improvement. And they expected at some point for it to balance out and not keep improving. Like, they figured after a certain amount of parameters it wouldn't keep getting better, to simplify it, but it did. So the idea is, if you keep scaling it up for another 2 to 4 years, it'll be like 3 to 5 times bigger and 3 to 5 times more efficient at writing code, at generating dialogue and story. What I'm hoping for is things like that get so sophisticated that you can have real-time games. Like, so a lot of single-player games, you play, all of the writing is pre-written by humans, right? When you talk to a NPC, it's voiced by a real human, and the things they say are all pre-written. But in 5 to 10 years, maybe like these... What would you call GPT-3? Like, these neural network systems will be so sophisticated they can write dialogue and generate like a text-to-speech synthesis in real time. To a degree, you can basically have a conversation with an NPC as if it's a real person. Yeah, if you know Facade, it's like that game where you talk to those two people in their house, in their apartment, and you can write the text and they'll give like pretty like relevant responses like that, but on a new level. Yeah, basically AI dungeon, but in a video game setting. You know, think Cyberpunk, but every NPC is believably aware, self-aware of what you say to it. So, like, imagine playing like a Bethesda game like Skyrim, but instead of picking one of 5 dialogue options, you can literally speak into a microphone or write it out on a keyboard, and then you wait 5 seconds, and then the NPC will spit out a response that as if it actually listened to you. Just gonna... That's all utopia talk, Funk. We live in a dystopia. Kind of linked with the political talk. I don't know. Yin and yang, ebb and flow. Like, we live in a dystopia, so can't there be a little bit of utopia as well? I read something recently, I think it was New Jersey. They bought some of those Boston Dynamic robots, like the ones that look like dogs, and they suited it up with like a paintball gun. And they're trying to make them walk around neighborhoods. I don't know how many of you have seen Black Mirror. There's an episode where they have these, like, these police robot dogs with guns that track people down and shoot them. It's like that, but, like, just slightly less dystopian. So, just if you wanted an update, we're getting there. That kind of coincides with the dystopia discussion you mentioned. It's gonna happen, by the way. Like, 10, 20 years from now, there's gonna be cop dogs. People are gonna kick them. Which, I love dogs. But... It's... I don't want to get to the point that we have automated systems policing us. That's dangerous territory. I worry about that. I already have major moral what's the word? Disagreements with like drone striking, with like going overseas and sending in like sometimes manned, sometimes unmanned drones that just like gun down civilians or quote unquote targets. Shit like that is extremely fucked up. Now imagine you know, having, you know, Terminators walking around your neighborhood, collecting, I don't know, rent. Wouldn't really want to live in that country. Automated systems can develop their own bias, leaving an automated system to itself to police people. It's a problem waiting to happen. Yeah, to simplify that, there's a certain point where you just don't control the system anymore, and if it develops its own biases of, I don't even know, of targeting people, or... Like, I don't want rich people making robots that target poor people and, you know, axe their kneecaps for not making rent on time. It's kind of... Is it realistic? No, but could the technology be created? Yes, and that's what concerns me. All U.S. interventions should be carried out by the UN. Yeah, I could kind of agree with that. I feel like a lot of U.S. interventions... I'm not gonna say they're all excuses to, like, encroach on foreign territories, but... the U.S. has been trying to, like, act like the police of the world, when we're not anymore. We used to break up fights, and now we're just... I don't know. Feels like we're abusing the privilege of trust that we built and then subsequently lost over the last 5 years. AI would only have these biases if trained to do so. If fed loads of data to this effect, GPT-3 can generate racist content because it's been fed it. Well, what I'm hoping is... if, like, these systems are fed enough information, maybe they'll be smart enough to discern human bias from, like, their own bias. Like, a computer might understand, or, maybe not a computer. Technology might understand that it has biases, but it would understand morality enough that it doesn't let it cloud its judgment. Basically, I'm hoping the computers are so smart that they see how fucking dumb we are, and they just jump over all of our hurdles. but that's pretty wishful thinking. Realistically, I think AI is gonna be like raising a child, and early on, it's gonna wobble around. It's not really gonna know how to walk, and if you aren't careful, it might pick up on some bad influences that we gotta teach it to not.
Mission ends in
Oh, there's gonna be robot lawyers for sure. Again, I'm of the opinion that 200 years down the line, everything can be automated, or at the very least, an AI can like step in and help you. Like even if everything isn't automated, I feel like computers will be able to follow along. Like there'll be assistance for everything. But that's just like my spitball theory. Do you think the world will become a boring dystopia if all our interactions with the world will be replaced by AI and the internet? It's already a dystopia. Whether or not it's a boring one is up for interpretation. I don't think so. I think... Therefore I am. I don't think it's going to be boring. I think it's going to be interesting. Because, like, infrastructure is gonna become easier. Just, maybe that's not super specific. Like, there's already medical technologies where, like, we'll have... I was talking to my friend, Crypto, who knows a bit about, like, the medical field. There's already some stuff where, like, you'll have robot hands guided by, like, human hands for doing really... intricate medical procedures. Maybe in the far future, robots will be capable of doing those medical procedures without human assistance. Stuff like that, I think, is going to be really good in the future. There's a lot of AI that can notice patterns in our body, like it can catch cancer before it starts building up in your body. Like it can notice things early on, basically, with its better pattern recognition. Like computers are just gonna be way better at pattern recognition, so we're gonna be able to notice bad shit before it happens, basically. So that has like a billion use cases. I don't think it's gonna necessarily be a dystopia, just because it, you know, a couple of bad systems start putting people out of jobs.
Mission begins in 30 seconds.
Have you seen the recent developments and comments on BCIs? Gabe Newell made a video describing the sheer possibilities such as editing our personalities or creating games with our brains. I saw what Gabe Newell was talking about, which was BCI is brain-computer interfacing, if I recall correctly. The idea is, if you can interface brains with computers, you can have video games that, like, adjust themselves in real time for the experience. Oh, I was scrolling up to read your comment again. Gabe Newell said something along the lines of being able to, like, I'm not sure how to articulate it. The idea is, like, you could stimulate the brain in such a way that you feel things, like, in a more... It's super, like, sci-fi. Give me a moment. You know, like when Jimmy Neutron brain blasts, when I like can't explain stuff, that's what I'm doing. I don't remember what Gabe Newell said in reference to editing our personalities. I just know that there would be some way to influence the way the brain acts and feels externally using, like, hardware. And I don't know how far in that is. I think it's like all like theoretical, but I wouldn't mind having my brain like linked up to something like a, you know, a Neuralink while I play games, just to enhance the experience. I don't want to be the first person testing that thing, but I'll jump on board. The question is, will technological advances keep improving at their current rate, or will they plateau? Yeah, there's been a lot of discussion on that. So, the idea of exponential growth implies that, like, with every passing year, improvements will, like, happen at a faster rate. But no one quite knows if it's gonna, like, plateau over the next 5 years. Like, the way, I think, like... So, like, you know how, like, computers have gotten smaller over the years? Like, GPUs, motherboards, we've been able to make smaller and smaller wires. But when things get... People figured that that would be exponential, but things got so small that, oh boy, I hope I don't butcher this explanation. The hardware got so small that it was like becoming quantum level, where you literally it wasn't reliable just because you couldn't have a static 1 or 0. It would just be somewhere like in the middle, or it wouldn't it wouldn't be one thing at any given time. So basically, we couldn't pack more onto motherboards because there was a physical limit on how small you could make stuff. So like, you could keep scaling up in AI, but what if after a certain point that plateaus as well? What if humanity kind of gets stuck at this point where it's like, the computers are almost awake, but there's just like a limitation, like a digital or physical limitation. Like, what if we just can't build the computer capable of running that kind of thing? I feel like, and I don't know shit, but I feel like you could have a decentralized system that isn't any, you know, one big black box, but just a collective system that is self-aware and self-improving. I don't see how that's not, how that would be limited by like a plateau. One computer doesn't do the job, try 2 computers. Well, quantum computers are the next step towards this, I believe. With the qubits in a quantum computer, they can set as 1 and 0 at the same time, massively increasing performance. Yeah, I read something about that recently. I think, like, they were trying to create, like, the first, like, functioning quantum computer or something to that effect. I have no idea what it does. I've read up on, like, what quantum, like, how things work at a quantum level. I don't know. To give you, like, a basic explanation of what quantum level is, sorry, I blanked because it's just so, weird. So usually, like, you code in 1s and 0. You don't code, but, like, things function in 1s and 0, but at a quantum level, when you get tiny enough, everything is moving so quickly that it doesn't stay in one state at any given time. I think that's what, like, spin is. The, like, quantum spin is like like an atom spinning so quickly. Something that's spinning around it basically is, like, on both sides of it at once. It's basically in every state of spin, and I apologize if that's not the best explanation, but a quantum computer is, like, to put it simply, like, it would be way faster than any normal computer, because if you could, like, understand if you could I don't know, keep information at a quantum level, and you could harness it, then it could just basically, like, crunch through numbers far faster, because it's not slowed down by, like, the rigidness of 1s and 0s. Like when you turn a fan on and it looks like the blades are at every angle. That's an interesting way to look at it. I can't verify whether that's like the same phenomena per se, but yeah, the idea is like it spins so quickly that you can't really track where its location is. I wonder if our brains work like that. Like, at a quantum level, if you zoom in on a brain, I'm curious what, similarities you would find. Which sounds stupid, but, like maybe if you zoom in on the brain deeply enough, maybe, like, we kind of function closer to, like, a quantum... Sorry, I'm just speaking out loud, like, I'm doing, like, lispy dipshit philosophy hour, just if you're curious. Are you high, man? Spiritually, I'm always high. Physically, no. Maybe that's what being high is. Maybe by default, you function like a normal computer, but when you're high, you go quantum mode. That was a joke, by the way. I just want to, like, put a citation. What if reality was actually powered by a quantum computer? Probably is.
Mission begins in 10 seconds.
And I'm just gonna say that like, as if I know.
4, 3, 2, 1.
What do you think of the probability that the universe might randomly break and glitch without us knowing? Maybe at like a certain scale that does happen, but just at a human level, we don't typically like notice it. Like there might be, I don't know, there might be a lot of things in the universe that happen that we don't notice. Just because our monkey brains can't keep up. Like maybe there are lots of errors and glitches in the universe, but like in the same way, like if I open up the console in TF2, you see all of these errors like backblast, particle shit. Like there's constantly errors in the source engine, but you don't notice it when you're playing because it does the job more or less. Maybe the universe is like that. And if you could open the developer console to the universe, you would notice all of these red errors. Is this reused gameplay? No, and I'll put my hand up to prove it. Look up that thing where if the Higgs boson can quantum tunnel to a lesser state of rest, the universe will end.
Stand next to the cart, damn you!
I feel like I understood that at a basic primate level, but not at like a deeper, like complex human level. Like I understand things slows down, universe go boom, but that's like that's all I understood. I may be a streamer, but I'm more of a reader than I am an explainer, as you'll come to find on these streams. I love trying to talk about it, though. Wow. I was gonna use that. Thoughts on Roko's Basilisk? No idea what that is. That is either a scientific concept or like a quantum action or the name of an anime. And I'm not sure which, because with my stream, it could honestly be either. Funk, how do you feel about the emergence of antibiotic-resistant superbacteria, and how do you feel about the potential of developing super-specific bacteriophage treatments? I know that that's a problem where we create like all of these hand soaps and antibodies, but like viruses are getting stronger to the point that there's like that they're unaffected by our antibodies, and they can just kind of step right on top of them and keep drudging through our systems. And it's a legitimate problem that if like these bacterias and viruses keep getting stronger, how are we going to like counter them? Because we can't just keep making stronger antibacterias if we reach a certain point where they like skeleton key all of our solutions. That's a good question. I feel like, to bring it back to like the computational angle, we'll probably rely on technology to identify that stuff early on, so we can like just cut it out of the body before it metastasizes or grows. Or like, fuck it, maybe we'll be able to actually calculate, or I don't know, maybe like a computer will be able to create the antibodies we need. I'm sure I sound stupid to anyone with like a basic medical understanding, but I just basically want the computer to solve everything. Oh, hello. We'll probably have to do a lot of the grunt work though. We gotta like teach it to be a god, you know what I mean? If you could abuse any glitch in the universe, what would it be? So, the missing no glitch from Pokemon. I would want to be able to, duplicate rare candies. And also, like, capture glitches in a Pokeball. Or at least, battle them, that is.
That's where books get you, Professor.
If we had perfect brain-to-computer communication, we were able to control computers with our minds, how much do you think TF2 players would increase their skill? So you say that kind of as a joke, but I bet you in the future there's going to be esports with brain integration. Like there's going to be like virtual games we play on screens, but we just like there's going to be a USB on the side of our head that we just plug into the computer, and we're going to use it. So instead of having to, you know, click 1, 2, 3 or E to input like say you're watching playing Overwatch or something, instead of hitting, you know, shift to do an ability, you just think about it. You just think about hitting that ability and it goes off. There's going to be esports like that. So I think literally there will be like a competitive skill to brain interfacing. What I look forward to is the creative uses of brain interfacing. So like recently I've been kind of wanting to pick up animation again, like with Source Filmmaker, but the problem with it is I have to use a mouse and keyboard to do all of the posing of the characters, and it's like a bit inconvenient, like because I might in my mind have an idea of how I want a character to be standing, but I have to use my hands and a mouse to make them stand that way. If I could interface my brain with the computer, maybe I could, you know, pose a character just with my mind. As stupid as that sounds. Or, I know there are, like, some VR animation programs where you can use your hands, or, like, your VR controllers, to drag the body parts around. You can't really... trying to think of the best way to describe this. Like, maybe you can interface the brain with the computer in such a way that I could use my hands to, like, set up the posing. Probably not the best explanation, but basically, cut out the middleman of using a mouse and keyboard, and like just use your, you know, your mind or your literal hands to do a lot of the grunt work. I bet you in 30 years people will be able to draw with their minds. Because, like, I can draw a stick figure in my head, right? But I have to use my hand to draw it on paper. But what if we could decode the third eye, so to speak? Just, not literally, but like the brain, in such a way you could draw with it. I know we're getting, like, really out there, but that's like the fun when I'm old, will I see it kind of talk. That's just sculpting. Hey, if you say so. Knock that pyro off the cliff. I can literally imagine an edited video in my head and it would be so much easier. Oh, agreed. So, like, a lot of the grunt work of editing, like a video and cutting down the timeline, can be super time consuming. But I feel like my kind of brain, maybe not as much as some other editors, but internally I can visualize how I want an edit to look faster than I can actually create that edit on my screen. But maybe with a complex enough level of brain interfacing, you can cut out the middleman of having to, you know, click all the buttons to, you know, tint the screen a certain color and pan and zoom the screen. Maybe you could just imagine, you know, a video clip edited in a certain way, and then, you know, an AI could spit out a couple of examples of, like, is this what you mean? And then you pick the best one, or you regenerate it until you get the right edit. Like, maybe 50 years in the future, everyone can be a video editor just by thinking about it. Like, you don't even have to have any knowledge of editing. You just have to have an understanding of, like, visual fidelity. Like, if you watch a lot of YouTube videos, you might understand what looks good, but you don't know how to make it. Maybe that'll, you know, translate to some degree in the future. I believe what you're trying to say is use your brain as a creative medium. Yeah, basically. I think that'll be possible. I just wonder what implications it'll have. Because I feel like that's the kind of thing it could have limitless possibilities, and I'm only thinking about it in relative terms. Like, as an editor. That's when the government will legitimately start chipping people. Nah, that's when the government's gonna be run by AI. And I'm okay with it. As long as they are humanistic in their policy making. And it's hard there's not much, like, compared to my current government, you know, it's a pretty low bar set in terms of being humanistic. Nowhere to go from but up. Maybe not nowhere to go, but, like, there's a lot of room for improvement. Let's put it that way. Humans are flawed. And I say that as a human who, like, embraces my humanity. You don't need to chip people when we're all carrying cell phones. That's true. I mean, we all put it up to our ear. Most of us have location services on at all times. It's almost impossible to be off the grid in modern day. Kitchen, I personally embrace like brain interface art just because I've always been the kind of person that's better at visualizing in my head what I want to make more than I am creating it. I've always like started projects, gotten halfway through them, and then just sort of, you know, lost my motivation when it wasn't coming out the way I liked it to. I do wonder if there's going to be a lot of dissent, like some people saying that it's not real art because like you use shortcuts to create it, but I mean that already exists in a lot of ways, I guess. Like shortcuts already exist, you know, there's a lot of like template editing that people say isn't editing, but it's still editing. I have not talked about the Pokemon reveals. I am the internet's opinion, which is lukewarmly interested but prepared to be let down. So the Diamond and Pearl remakes looked like they're just made to hit a deadline. They are not making those games to be good remakes. They did not look visually interesting. It seemed like they were cutting constant corners. They lost a lot of the charm of the original Gen 4. Like, they changed the grass color to be way more generic. A lot of the details on the backgrounds. Like, it's a higher texture, but it's just... Gen 4 Remake isn't looking too good. The Arceus Legends thing, I'm excited for, but I'm worried that there's not going to be anything to do in the overworld. I'm worried they're going to release that Breath of the Wild Pokemon game, and it's going to be all catching and battling. I want there to be like a bunch of Pokemon-based puzzles littering the overworld, and I don't know if I trust Game Freak to do that. That not even mentioning how, like, beta the Arceus game actually looks. It looks like they just threw it together for the presentation, but they're not actually that far in on development. Like, there's not shadows. They just used the same 4 tree models. When you saw, like, they had the wide shot of the overworld, but there was nothing in it. There wasn't any caves. There wasn't any buildings or, you know, things to interact with. You know, when you see Breath of the Wild in a still shot, you see like 5 different places that make you go, damn, I want to run over there and see what there is. But I didn't get that feeling from that Pokemon trailer. I just got the feeling of, oh, they did that thing everyone wanted, but without any of the charm or like detail that gets people optimistic and excited for it. Yeah, I mean, I would agree with that. I'm Cine. I'm glad they're at least trying the format, changing it. FUNKe, why stream on YouTube instead of the Twitch audience? It's just not as many people knew when I would stream on Twitch, so the chat wouldn't be quite as active. A lot of people just didn't know I streamed, so streaming here was like a better way for people to know. And really, I was just trying to break some of my own anxiety about making content because I haven't been active. I thought if I went live on YouTube, it would help me sort of like face my inactivity, so I could get back in the creative mindset. I just felt like it. I'm sorry, Gawain. I didn't see. David Gott, I think trans rights, to answer your question. It's nothing cuter than a heavy just crouching on the teleporter. Long-range weapon, by the way. I saw the TF2 Unity project. So someone's trying to recreate TF2 in the Unity engine. And so far they've made Badwater with the TF2 soldier and rocket jumping. I love it if only for the fact that like, you know, maybe one day they'll be making their own updates for it. Although I guess that kind of already exists in like TF2 Classic. I think it's cool. Just seems like someone's pet project, though. Part of what I meant by boring dystopia is malls are slowly disappearing because of online shopping. Theaters might be up next because of streaming. We won't have those experiences anymore. Well, part of that's just because a lot of stuff is closed down right now. But yeah, the internet has definitely made us more connected and less socially connected. I could see like a dystopia in that there's not as much to do locally, especially if the pandemic doesn't end anytime soon. Some people have concerns that COVID is going to keep mutating and it'll be around for like 5 or 10 years. Like, we might make vaccines for it, but if it mutates enough, the vaccines might not be enough, and we'll have to keep things shut down. That's what I worry about, because I can definitely feel the stress on me of, like, I've wanted to go out and see a movie. I've wanted to, you know, go do local stuff, but I just, for the good of society, I just can't right now. I can't justify it. That's more my concern than the internet making, you know, theaters outdated. Like, I think there will always be an intrinsic desire to do local stuff, because this pandemic has taught everyone that being at home, online all the time, makes you go crazy. It makes you want to go out and go somewhere. And that's coming from someone who, before the pandemic, never really left the house. Like, I never left the house, but I had the option to. And, now not being able to, you know, go anywhere. Basically, when I get the chance to, I'm gonna use it. As do many other people feel, I would guess. COVID is the best way for rich people to earn money right now. Just think about it. Oh, it's been proven. Like, the richest people in the world have gotten richer during COVID because more people are at home, so they're buying more supplies to make it to get by, staying at home all day. I can't think of that many like specific example as to where their revenue's being generated. But, like, people are just consuming more because they're stuck at home and they need to keep themselves busy and entertained and, you know, alive. Which just begs the question of, like, why the fuck, you know, are we not passing stimulus bills and, distributing that wealth downward into the economy? Like, rich people are getting richer. Meanwhile, it's, you know, it's more difficult and stressful to work a job from home, disconnected socially from people, you know, with the minimum wage not going up, with, you know, UBI not being a thing. Capitalism is like currently the boss fight that America is stuck on. Like, I've been playing, I was playing Bloodstained 2, right? It's like a Metroidvania game. And the first boss is this giant green dragon. And I kept getting through the level, but then I would get to this giant green train dragon thing. And I could not for the life of me beat it. I just kept dying, restarting the level, getting to this boss, and then dying and starting over. That's where we are, but with, like, money. Like, we're we're getting through the level of, all right, we figured out how to work from home. All right, we figured out how to more or less keep ourselves sane. But then you get to the boss fight, and it's like, all right, we need to convince our government to raise our wages because the corporations won't be fucked to do it on their own. And we just keep losing this boss fight. No problem, Happy. Money is what made America bomb my county in the 90s. It makes people bad. Too much money. I don't think the problem is money in itself. I think you can have a money system. The problem is you can't have wealth be hoarded. That's where the problems start arising. Because then money starts getting in the way of politics. It starts getting in the way of how everything is run. You know, we call it lobbying in America, but that's just a fancy word for money decides politics. That's like a major problem. We should not be making this, like, we need to be governing around financial decisions, but not just over what, you know, the CEOs want, right? I'm trying to think of a way to explain this with, like, a takeaway. Money shouldn't be in politics. I don't think people that are getting elected into politics should be able to buy their way there. I don't think... And there are a couple ways you could go about dealing with that. Like, why... What if we could divert our taxes in some way? So, like, certain... like, I don't know. You could help fund grassroots politicians. While also like, having policies that don't let you just... I don't know. Like, I don't like the idea of big businesses and corporations and rich people funding the politicians that they like. And then they do it at such an exorbitant degree that the grassroots politicians just literally can't keep up. They can't afford to get elected. I think that's a solution we need right now. I think that money should not be influencing our senators or our congressmen and women at all. Our congresspeople. I don't think our presidents should have any, you know, monetary ties. Like, they shouldn't be allowed to... here, let me just fucking spitball here. Take Secret Service to their hotel and fill up an entire story. Stuff like that. Like, that's sort of... You know, you gotta sell the peanut farm, so to speak, before you enter office. The U.S. is an oligarchy, not a democracy. Agreed. We say we're a democracy, but it's really... It's democracy light. It's definitely not the governing principles here. If the governing principles were true democracy, then, you know, we wouldn't have half the country struggling the way they are. It's easy to talk from the bottom, but people at the top would never make it easier to get there. It'd just be stupid for them to do so. I know, and that's the problem with just letting corporations grow and grow without any regulation. The reason we need government to step in on corporations and businesses is because when they grow too big, and you get people like Amazon, they don't pay their employees as much as they should be. They don't provide the wages or the like, they overwork their employees. They don't conform to the standards that society would want a business to run at. People like, okay, corporate businesses like Amazon. By people, I mean like in the general sense of Amazon as an entity. Not paying, you know, the boxers, the people that are moving boxes at the factory, $15 an hour minimum. What's a better alternative to capitalism? A technocracy. I don't think that's a real term. I'm not saying that we need an alternative to capitalism. I'm saying we need to fix the flaws in capitalism. Because capitalism, in its current practice state in America, it's working to the benefit of the people at the top and like the middle upper, and to the, you know, to the distress of the people in the middle and at the lower end. It's not about like, you know, pulling out the mega guillotine for every rich person, but it's about pulling out the guillotine for their wallets, you know what I mean? And a concern I hear is like, well, if you regulate these businesses, they're just gonna go overseas and take their business elsewhere. But that's a theory based on nothing. That's just because that's not accounting for the amount of money it would require to move their businesses out of America. All of the having to, you know, ship all of the business that they already run in America now being moved further away, so they have to ship things back into America. All of this in the middle of a major pandemic. I don't think it's reasonable to say, well, we should just bend over for the billionaires because they run everything and we don't want them to leave. If the billionaires run everything and you don't want them to leave, maybe they have too much power. Maybe we should take some of the power back from the, you know, from the dollar bills and make a functioning economy that's self-sufficient for everyone. You know, it's not the 90s, it's not the it's not the 40s. It's not realistic to say, well, everyone has opportunity if they just work hard enough. Because realistically, a lot of people, no matter how many hours they work, there's only so many upper positions to make a lot of money. Like, there's going to be more people working at the ground level than there are at high management positions, is what I mean. And it's not even, you don't even have to go into the realm of communism to understand this is like basic economic stuff. Like, if you if you let people just keep making money and don't require them to put that money back into the people they're paying, they're not going to do it. They're not going to feel obligated to pay their employees more just because they make more money. So what do you do then? It's not like the government has to step in and say, hey, you're not paying your employees enough. Pay them more. We are going to make you pay your employees more. It's not an option. It's not even on... You don't even have to go to socialism either. This might be a scary word for those of you who don't know what it means, but a social democracy is viable. That's not socialism. It's democracy, but with a focus on social policies. We pay for the roads, we can pay for our employees. But I don't want to repeat myself too much. Actually, I do want to repeat myself too much, because this has just been the United States for how long? Like, certainly the last 3 or so decades. Apparently we have to keep having these conversations until the spineless GOP finally do something about it. And the spineless liberal coalition, who are equally, or maybe not equally, but basically just as indebted to big business and corporations. Why are we funneling billions of dollars into the military? Yeah, we shouldn't be. But the reason is because the United States' military presence was what helped our economy flourish early on. And we just found that the more we scaled up our military, the more we could kind of do whatever we want on the global stage. And we, like, justified it by going overseas and, you know, protecting, you know, like, the little guys. But we're also using that to be where we shouldn't be, to kill people that shouldn't, that don't deserve it, that don't deserve to be killed. Our military spending is egregious, and a lot of it at this point seems to just be like puffing our chest out and saying, we won the earth, everyone, we won the earth, all right? And we're gonna remind you with our big guns that say we won the earth on the side of them. You know where we could be spending that money? Our education system. To pay our employees to provide healthcare to every American. You know, to just like fund research and development of things that would help our society. Of you know, investing into domestic renewable energies, so we don't have to be so focused on oil and gas. Instead of spending it all on military, maybe we could spend it on becoming self-sufficient as a country. But we don't want to do that because we found having a big military got us this far, and a lot of people in power don't want to try anything new. They're happy with the system that we got because they already have power. My country was destroyed by the CIA in the 80s, Argentina. That's unfortunate. But that's just a case example of us justifying fucking up the businesses of other countries just by saying, well, we're allowed to because everyone used to let us do it. I don't want to say I'm anti-military, but our military makes me uncomfortable. I don't think the United States' like golden star should be we have big military. I think it should be like being progressive, providing assistance to those who need it, including our own domestic citizens, which we don't currently do to the degree we should be. You don't know what you're talking about? Could you be more specific? I think our military spending could be used for like domestic stuff. We don't need to be buying guns and drones and copters, right? That money could be going into our own economy, but it doesn't. Bruh, it was Chile, not Argentina. Oh, I don't know. I'm just reading a YouTube chat comment. Yell at him, not them, not me. America doesn't buy them, it sells them. What, like, we definitely buy drones. Or I guess you mean like we build drones and then sell them. The point is, our military budget should be re-resourced, but it just isn't. And if anyone can give me a valid reason as to why it's not, I welcome it. I just don't see a purpose in our military spending. You have one question? Alright, thank you. Thank you for the question. Isn't that because of all the bonuses to the military, like the education? What do you mean, like the increased spending is because of the bonuses those in our military receive? I don't know about you. Like, maybe this is me going out on my own leg, but I don't feel like you should have to get drafted to go to war just to afford an education. That sounds like a pyramid scheme to me. Like, we could just be sending every... Like, imagine 20 years down the line how much better America would be if we just gave every kid, like, free college. But because, to me, educating our youth equals a stronger future for America. Yet, so much of our society goes into debt while we, you know, spend all our money in foreign affairs and convincing kids to get drafted so that they can afford a college education. When really that should just be an option to them available. Because we definitely have the budget for it. We're just not spending the budget in that way. Because we don't find an immediate benefit from it, I guess. Supposedly. The youth don't vote. There's a lot we could be doing to make that better, though. You could become automatically registered to vote. We could have a national voting holiday. We could have increased education on politics in our schools so people understand, like, when to go vote, where to go vote, like, teach people how to go vote. I had to basically go look all that up on my own. As an adult, I had to become politically active because my school really did not prepare me to be so on my own. We could be providing healthcare to everyone instead of making it like, you know, an exclusive to being in the military. Are American adults children? Do you need to teach them to vote? Our education system doesn't prepare people to vote. And, like, it doesn't seem to be conveyed as the priority it should be. I don't know how many of you heard, but, recently, like, 22 different states, or, like, 43 different states just, put in a bunch of basically anti-voting measures that make it harder to vote. Primarily the GOP and the Republican Party were the ones doing this, mind you. But the idea was limiting the there are less early days to vote. It's harder to vote on. I don't think you can vote on Sundays in certain states. The hours of voting got shortened. There are active measures in this country to make it more difficult to vote. What are you? Because there are a lot of vested efforts in America to make it, to just keep people out of politics, to make politics look like, oh, well, both sides are the same and nothing ever changes, so it's not even worth voting. Dude. The people in power that don't want things to get better want you to think that. They want you to think things won't get better and everyone's the same because it lets them just step all over the country, not provide the progressive benefits that we need. When in reality, more political activity is only a good thing. Listen, I'm not a fan of both parties either. It frustrates me seeing the Democratic Party just like let the GOP do what they want, not hold them to a standard, trying to like wag their finger at them as if the average GOP senator has anything resembling a conscience. But it's not even comparable between the two. So the problem is, one, between the two there is one that's very clearly working in favor of corporations and big business, and one that is actually receptive to governing for the people. The Republican Party is not governing for the average person. They're governing for pockets and where money flows. But the deeper problem is that it's not viable to run third party. Just by the nature of the two-party system, even though both parties are like objectively bad and flawed in various independent ways, there's really realistically not a third option in our country. And it's not realistic to say, hey, if we all just agree to vote third party, maybe we can like ditch this system. It doesn't work that way. You have to Trojan horse through the two-party system if you want meaningful change. Otherwise, climate change is going to be fucked, because it's going to take 40 years to instill any meaningful change, because you can't get anyone elected. You have to go through the two-party system. And if you're going to do that, the least you can do is try to get the parties to have more progressive policies. I've yet to see the GOP put up anything remotely close to progressive policies. Which is like, the Democratic Party doesn't really do that shit either, but they at least act like they will. They don't actually do it, but they at least act like they will. And then it just goes to Senate, and then it gets held up, and then gets cut down, you know, $700 million on the budget, until it's like a former shell of itself. Why talk politics? Because politics is reality, man. We're all affected by it, wherever you are. Even if you're not in America, your country has politics. Even if it's like a dictatorship, that's still politics. Talking politics is stupid. It leads to no actual change normally, and no system is perfect. No, talking politics helps people share opinions so that more people are politically active. If I share my political opinions, and some people here who aren't politically active might hear it and go, wow, I didn't think about that. I'm gonna, like, maybe if I can convince one person in my chat to go out and vote the next time you've got a general or local election, then I'm helping. Then it's not even about me, though. If one person in a conversation walks away with a newfound understanding of politics and they go and vote, then that is meaningful change. That is in itself making something happen. Even if the system itself doesn't get fixed, more people have to be aware for those changes to eventually happen. Like, I'm not the biggest platform, right? I'm not out here streaming to tens of thousands of people. But it's still reach. In my opinion, political activeness is only a good thing. Being politically active can only benefit you as a person.
Competition begins in 10 seconds.
You can choose to not be politically active, but you're removing yourself from power. Because you have to remember, as voters, our voice in government is voting. Our voice is picking the people to represent us, and removing the people we don't want to represent us. And if you give up that voice, you're giving up your power as an individual. Worse yet, you're allowing people that you might not want in power whatsoever to take power, because you chose to not vote in against the person that would have been better than them. Like when people like Trump get elected, and you like it or not, a lot of the country was not happy with him. But a lot of the country didn't show out to vote because they didn't like, you know, the Democratic Party. They can't complain. They can complain, but they have to live with the self-awareness that they didn't vote. I guess the point I'm saying is, be politically active and don't talk down on others for being so. I know, base level observation, but this is America. Apparently it needs to still be made. What if my vote is misguided by all the fake shit online? Then you're just one of the millions, my man. You're just one of the millions. My response to that is you be diligent on your research. Don't just listen to pundits. Don't just listen to like a singular source of information. Follow the discourse of what listen to what people are, how people are reacting in all different, you know, communities. Just being politically active comes with a responsibility to be skeptical of information inherently. Like I can't name any one source that can give you all your political information, but I can say that objective information does exist somewhere. Even if that objective information is just coverage of what your politicians are doing, so you know who not to vote for. Like, you don't have to find someone who says vote for X, Y, Z, but know who's in power. If you see your politicians doing stuff you disagree with, then then you're less likely to go in and vote. You know, you're not going to go in and vote for someone when you disagree with what they're doing or what they're saying. But if you go in to vote and you don't even know, like, the 5 names on the ballot, and you just pick, this person was, next to their name was the color that I like. I don't know who this is, but they had the blue ballot, so I voted for them. Like, don't do that. Try to actually read in. If anything, don't just focus on general elections. I followed, you know, the Democratic nomination process back, like, before Super Tuesday. I had an idea of who I wanted to vote for. I, you know, donated to them, like, regularly. And I didn't canvass by any means, but I was aware of what they were promising as a politician, and I was aware of where I disagreed with them. And I still was comfortable with them. So that when I actually went in to vote, I knew I had an idea in mind of who I wanted in. Yang Gang? No, I was in for Bernie. Yang had my respect. And there wasn't a Republican nomination process. It's just the cult of Trump. It's just, if you were curious, there was not like a second option. Not that I would have even cared. Do you think making politicians fear for their lives would make them cooperate? It's not about making them fear for their life. It's about holding them accountable and making them fear for their careers. The problem is these politicians are allowed to go out and say insane, batshit crazy QAnon shit, and just keep their job. They're allowed to, like, incite violence and basically domestic terrorism on Twitter and not face consequences for it. They're allowed to, you know, harass other politicians and not face consequences. They need to be held to a standard, of which they currently aren't. Or at least not to the level they should be. What's your opinion on Disney constantly extending the time before stuff can be in the public domain? It pisses me off. I dislike Disney trying to stranglehold their own IPs. A lot of terrible copyright law is a result of Disney I think like Disney using all of their money to extend copyright laws in favor so they don't lose the rights to Mickey Mouse and crew. A lot of like there are a lot of great TV shows and franchises that would have become public domain, so anyone could have made content, like official content for them, that Disney ruined it for. Because they extended the copyright laws, so people are allowed to just sit on IPs and not even make content on them. They just keep the legal rights to them. Just another example of big corporations and businesses abusing their influence because they're not being reeled in. FUNKe, where do I start with politics and developing a political opinion? There's so much, it's overwhelming. There's a lot of avenues for it. Generally, just like the internet's a great resource for learning, like, I don't know where you live or but finding out how your political parties act, what their policies generally are. Look up your representatives, see what their history is, the kind of, like, whether they're progressive or conservative or moderate. Once you look into that, you can start looking, like, for example, I know I'm a really social voter. I like progressive social policies. So in America, I look for social progressive candidates. At first, that started with the presidency. Like, I just looked for the presidential candidate that I was happiest with. Then, from there, I looked at local politicians. Like, I found who were my progressive social politicians locally, which was John Ossoff and Senator Warnock.
Mission begins in 30 seconds.
But it really depends on where you are, what your options are. It never hurts to be politically active, both locally and, like, on a federal level. I would say be careful on, like, what resources you use online. Because, like, you can read up about politics anywhere, but every place is prone to have their own bias. You can't go wrong with just, a couple of the right Google search terms, though. And if you really want to get involved, I'm sure that there are, like, people that offer services or like, classes that, like, teach you how politics work. I don't know about a class that teaches you about political... there are classes that teach you about political ideology while remaining unbiased. Or, like, not teaching you to agree with them, but just teaching you to understand the political hemisphere. Like, if you really want to get involved, that's not a terrible option. Just make sure you're going to an accredited source. Justin, this becomes political just because I'm a political person. That's why. How confident are you in Georgia's Democratic position going forward? I'm concerned about it. I'm worried about it. Because the GOP is increasingly adding on anti-voting measures, making voting harder for people. The claim that voter fraud and mail-in voting isn't reliable, even though it is, and there's really no evidence to imply otherwise. So, like, I think there are, like, less drop boxes now as of recent policies in Georgia, just making it harder to vote. I'm worried about it. And I'm really hoping that, like, youth turnout increases, or like just... I'm hoping voter turnout isn't too negatively affected, so that Georgia can get back on its feet. Because right now, my state it's wobbling right now, democratically. I was really happy with our senators getting elected, but locally we still have a lot of problems. And you know, everyone, it's hard to talk about. It's hard to get the political coverage people need, because there are a lot of people that want to be disconnected from politics. They don't think it's worth following, or they don't know where to follow it. I don't know. It's a tricky question. People understand the political, educational, and social issues. Most acknowledge and spread awareness, and a few attempt to make small changes. But people are cruel to those who lack power and influence and are unappreciated and forgotten to time. Yeah, it's this problem where I feel like a lot of America understand, like, we have people who have identified the problems, but we just don't have, we haven't come to the agreement on how to solve it. Like, we know that money is a problem. We know that people need help. But we're getting stuck in all of these micro arguments of, oh, the way you think is going to help will actually make things worse. So instead of arguing like, all right, how are we going to implement these solutions, we're arguing over whether or not they're even solutions to begin with. Which, as a voter, makes me want to tear my hair out. Thoughts on communism and Marx? I will give you an honest answer just so I can clear the air. I'm not a communist. I don't agree with communist ideology. I really don't know enough about Marx to give you my opinion on it. I don't agree with his ideology. I don't think you can, like, dismantle capitalism and just distribute all of the wealth equally. I don't think that's an option whatsoever. I'm a proponent of social democracy. I'm fine. I think capitalism can be improved and fixed of its flaws, but I don't think a lot of our current people in power are ready to undergo the changes necessary to do so, because part of those changes involves not letting lobbyists fill up their pockets. It involves paying workers' wages more. It involves providing basic social benefits to people. You know, like healthcare and higher wages. That's not a communist ideology. That's just righting the wrongs. I mean, it's basic economics, frankly. If you just look at the fact that the minimum wage hasn't gone up in, you know, decades, when it should have, when inflation has occurred, when the worth of money has changed, but the money we're paying people has not. There's a discrepancy there.
I do not see a cart moving, ladies.
I'm gonna find a new server. Night Happy. They made laws to limit who can purchase stocks specifically because of GME. I only vaguely followed, like, the GME thing, so I don't know much about it. I just know, I can't speak to it. I would have to read it in more. Do you think we're gonna get a socialist scare similar to a Red Scare? Depending on your political ideology, we already have. There are certain people who already do think that this, quote unquote, in citations here, socialists are like coming for our democracy, which is just a way to fearmonger people into being scared of change.
Begins in 60 seconds.
European-style democracy or the U.S. two-party system if you had to choose? Well, the European-style democracy allows for, like, at least 4 to 5, like how many viable parties are there in Europe? I think at least, like, between 3 and 5 on average. Which I would take any day over the 2 we currently have. The fundamental problem with the two-party system is it homogenizes the policies into like a very specific sweeping there's no room for like radical changes from the norm. Like you have to conform to what the party likes, otherwise you're just not going to get the nomination because you're going to be considered too radical. You're going to be painted as a socialist. They're going to claim all of the worst possible scenarios of you without being checked, by the way, because we just allow media to say whatever the fuck they want. The two-party system forces you to compromise because otherwise you're just not going to have a platform.
Mission begins in 60 seconds.
What do you think about moderates / centrists? I've known a few. I think things are too urgent and of importance in the modern day to take a modern or centrist stance. I think like compromisers are what got us into this mess, because you have Democrats compromising for like comically evil. Not every Republican, but a subset of Republicans who are voting in favor of corporations and big money, and then you have blue people compromising and saying, you know, this is the only way you're gonna agree to get my policies through, so I'll compromise and let you stamp over your workers and, you know, not pay them fairly. I think being a moderate and being a centrist doesn't show the urgency necessary to tackle the problems of modern society. I think the days of like the Reagan moderate is over, because the economy is too, like, I'm not gonna say it's in shambles, but the stock market doing well is not representative of the economy doing well. And we need, like, major non-moderate changes to, I don't know, to deal with those kind of issues. I don't know enough about what, like, the centrist stance is to, like, debunk the actual viewpoint. All I know is I don't think it's equipped for like modern problems. That's all. That's my opinion. That's my point of view. Centrists have the right idea. Extremist ideas of the far left or far right are dangerous. Being in between and being able to take the best from both only makes sense. Centrist doesn't mean passive. Yeah, but the problem is the definition of centrist in America differs from, like, the global definition of centrist. Because the idea of far left in America, or being like a radical progressive, is actually pretty, like, near centrist, or at least moderate left on the global stage. Like, people would paint me as far left, even though in many other countries I would just be a centrist, or, you know, a bit like a moderate left. And that's kind of the problem with it. America has its own standard here. Like, far left and far right ideologies definitely do exist. Like, objectively, there are people who think communism is viable, and there are people who just want to like lick boots all day. But like our politics are so tribalized that real centrism, like what would you define as a centrist in America? And I ask that like genuinely, where would a centrist lie? Like the average neoliberal, is that a centrist? Just because I don't agree. If we're gonna go with like a neoliberal being a centrist, I don't agree with a lot with where neoliberals or like the average Democrat or like the old guard Democrat, I should say, and even like the old guard Republican, not ready to tackle the modern day problems. They want to compromise at a time where we need sweeping changes, where we need major changes that the upper class are going to say are radical and are going to say are extreme, but they're really not. I don't like that. Status quo isn't what we should strive for. Even after like the era of Trump, it's not enough to want to go back to status quo. We have to literally fix all of the fucked shit that has been allowed to occur in this country. And by the by, bombing Syria is status quo. That's not improving. That's not improving whatsoever.
Mission begins in 60 seconds.
Nuclear energy really is the only viable energy source. And not electricity. Electric energy is viable. We just have to scale it up. Now, I'm all for nuclear energy. That was the one thing I disagreed with Bernie on. He felt that it was not a clean energy source. I liked the idea of nuclear energy. But it'll probably be a hard sell on the, like, on the political stage. You'd have to, like... We need to have, like, a full-scale movement to get rid of the negative connotations to nuclear energy. And I worry that it's not going to happen fast enough. Because climate change is too big of a deal for us to wait 40 years to go, you know, 100% electric and nuclear. That's another problem I have with, like, centrist moderate ideologies. Stuff like climate change necessitates major changes soon. Like, even though fossil fuels are a major part here of our economy, we can't be reliant on them in 2030, in 2040, so on. We have to get off of them, but a lot of our politicians aren't ready to make that call because it requires changing a lot to get there. FUNKe, nuclear energy is much cleaner overall than traditional methods. Fusion reactors are pretty exciting for energy production, incredibly efficient, more so than nuclear, I believe. I assume you mean electric in that last one. I mean, that just shows the fact that, like, I try to be politically active and I don't even really know where nuclear energy stands on the viability scale. If someone like me, who tries to be politically active, isn't totally aware of like how viable nuclear is, then that's like the average person probably doesn't know anything whatsoever about it, and that needs to be changed. I would hope that that would be something we implement into our education system, honestly. I feel like the kids growing up need to have a important focus on, hey, like, we all exist in modern society, but it's really not long-term viable, and we all need to fix this. I'm of the opinion that I think in the next 15 to 20 years, we all need to be driving electric cars. More specifically, self-driving cars. Had to step away for a moment. Every car is going to be self-driven when you're old, by the way. Any of you car buffs in chat, I just want to like rip that band-aid right now. It'll probably be illegal to drive a car in like 50 years. I mean, self-driving cars are already pretty efficient. Now imagine you give them 40 more years of training. You get to a point where like 70 to 80% of the cars on the road are self-driven. You would have to be a madman to want to drive the vehicle yourself at that point. And frankly, I'm excited for it. Imagine we get to a point where like you can't even drive your own car. Like I imagine in our lifetime there will always be a wheel that you can take control over it. But there might be a point where it's like irrational to ever drive the vehicle yourself. Like maybe we'll all just be playing on our Switches in the front seat 40 years from now. Who knows? Side note, you should not play a console while you're driving, even if the car is driving. Just get a rail system at that point. A rail system is less efficient than having self-driven cars, because self-driven cars can merge and change lanes freely, whereas a rail, they're all stuck on the same line. Just have public transportation that's actually good. Well, if you have self-driving cars, that would be public transportation. Like, you could have self-driving Ubers. Like that, maybe everyone won't even need cars. You know how you go downtown and there are scooters everywhere? Maybe in the future there'll just be self-driving car lots on every corner. And if you gotta go somewhere, you just pull out your phone and call it. I wouldn't mind it. I don't have a car right now myself. So if I could just like call up, you know, Herbie the Love Bug, I wouldn't mind. Thanks, Feg Host. BG. I'm a proponent of UBI, Big Brungus. I think it's unnecessary, especially in the pandemic. I think we could find the budget for it. And I think it would provide a lot more opportunity to the average American if that economic relief was provided to them. I can't really speak to like the arguments for it more thoroughly. You have to do your own research. I couldn't give you a fair explanation just on this stream. Maybe one day to do some more research. Well, self-driving cars already exist, but they're not the majority of the ones on the road. The idea is slowly self-driving abilities will be added to like new cars, and then like 10 years down the line, every car will be driven by, you know, a person, but it'll be capable of self-driving. And at that point, it's just about implementing the policies that require people to have a self-driving car. Or even more, require people to have the car drive itself. And then like 20 years after that, you just make it illegal to drive cars by hand. Like, it's a step-by-step process, but I think we'll eventually get there. You don't think it's an overreach on freedom to have required self-driving cars? Well, if it happened in the next, like, decade or two, it would be an overreach. But I'm talking, like, 40 years down the line, at a point where the majority of the owned cars on the road are already self-driving. So this is like a point where everyone still drives, or most people still drive, but everyone's cars can self-drive. At that point, when every car is capable of self-driving, I don't think it's an overreach to require people to let the car drive itself. Because it's way more dangerous for a person who has erratic behavior, who might be in a rush, who might, you know, tailgate or, you know, just drive too fast. That's a bigger problem than a self-driving car. The idea is more self-driving cars are more capable of communicating with each other. Just like, you know, imagine every car has a Wi-Fi, or not a Wi-Fi, just like a signal that it can send to the cars around it, so the cars around it knows what it plans on doing. They can forecast their own actions to each other. So 40 years down the line, if every car is self-driving and every car is, you know, capable of sending signals to the cars around it, it's going to be way safer. It's going to be way faster. You're not going to have traffic snakes, which is when one person hits their brakes and every car behind them has to hit their brakes too. That stuff won't happen if every car is self-driven. Or at least not to the same degree. Thanks, Jubsy. How would you make U.S. healthcare cheaper? I would just find the budget to have it available to every American. I would, you know, take the budget from the military. I'm not a congressman myself, but I'm sure you know, our budget could be redistributed in such a way we could afford healthcare for people. Because right now, healthcare is either provided by the companies you work for, or you have to pay out of pocket to get the healthcare. But if it comes out of your taxes, it's already covered. You don't have to pay for it out of pocket, and your boss will have to actually pay you more, because they can't just write, oh, well, we cover your healthcare, so we can pay you minimum wage. If the government provided healthcare for you, that would just be another incentive for, you know, the CEOs of companies to have to actually raise the wages, because they couldn't use healthcare as an excuse. No, I didn't say lower taxes. I just said taxes. Use your tax money to pay for it. Think about it like this. I don't know how much you pay for healthcare right now. Just off the top of my head, I'm on my family's. But let's imagine you pay a couple thousand out of pocket right now for healthcare. If your taxes were raised, so you had to pay $2,000 more, but you didn't have to pay those $2,000 to get healthcare from your from third party, nothing changed. You're just paying that money elsewhere. So even if your taxes go higher, even if your taxes go up, you're paying less elsewhere in your life. I think that's where, like, the confusion comes from. People are afraid of your taxes going up without realizing you're saving money elsewhere in your life. And yeah, I'm sure there'll be a couple of case examples where people's taxes go up and they don't save money per se. But I think if the average person is paying less and their taxes go up, but they're paying less money for healthcare, that's only a benefit. But that's like the really tricky part that some people get scared of because they don't understand. It's on average $2K for healthcare on Trump's tax plan. Trump saved the average family $5K, so lower taxes is better. I'm gonna need a citation on that just because that sounds... I'm not gonna... I don't know enough to even follow up on that. All I know is, people shouldn't be afraid of their taxes going up so long as their healthcare payments go down. You know what I mean? How should the U.S. deal with growing Chinese global influence? Self-sufficiency. I know that's a really general answer. I can't speak to what ways there's a growing China influence. That's like I don't want to go down the route of xenophobia or just trying to stoke the fires of fear where they don't need to be. And I don't know enough about like how economically involved China is outside of like all of the imports they provide us. I just don't know enough to really answer your question, I guess is my point. Chopper, what kind of healthcare system do I want? Truthfully, I'm just not educated enough on healthcare to go into detail on it. That's the kind of thing I need to learn more about myself. Again, I'm in my 20s and I'm on my family's healthcare plan, so I don't know. I don't have enough like personal experience paying for healthcare to speak to like where prices should be. I just know that having it provided by government is like plausible. It's not as radical as or as outlandish as some people would want to paint it as. Do you think the US could succeed with a more socialist model, per se the likes of Scandinavia? You would have to avoid that just because of how scary the word socialist is to like 3/4 of the country. They just wouldn't trust it because you know, the modern media machine has so much control. You would have to educate people on what socialism even is. Like I don't know much about Scandinavia, but I'm all for socialism social policies, not socialism or being a socialist per se, but having social based policies. Apologies on my word slip there. You ever tried DMT? Nope. Never tried any psychedelics. I've tried weed. I've smoked weed on multi occasions. But no psychedelics, my friend. I talked a bit about that last stream. I want to see more drugs legalized and researched and studied. I'm all for having more open drug laws, or really like decriminalizing them. But personally, I'm pretty cautious on what I put in my body. You should be a socialist. I mean, I've thrown a joke around here and there, but on a literal level, I'm social democracy is where I would put my footing. Just because the idea of socialism it's a pretty broad term, and it can be, people can put a lot of negative connotations that I don't conform with. So I prefer to not label myself as such. Funk, I think Mark may change your mind on socialism, though I agree with you a lot. Marx may at least help you better understand it. Hey, I mean, I'm all for reading literature so I can understand stuff more. So, like, if you're really proposing that I read into Marx, I think understanding what socialism is would help. I don't know. It would help me talk about it. I just don't know if I agree with like it on a fundamental level. That's all. Thank you, Frosty.
You will stand next to that cart, or I will stand you next to that cart.
I'm probably gonna call the stream after the end of this match of Thunder Mountain. Just by the by. Starting to feel my stomach grumble, which is usually where I call it on my streams. have I taken the 16 personalities test? I made a video on that once, like way back, like 2015. I think I was INTP. Although I think that would... I'm not a big fan of the 16 personality model because it feels too rigid. It implies that there's some level of like strict stringency to your personality. I think like who I am is more fluid than just being introverted or just being like, you know, a thinker. Like, I think I can be extroverted to the right people. And I think sometimes I'm more creatively driven, but sometimes I turn off the creative neurons and I focus on like logic. Overall, I would say though, like, yeah, I'm like mostly introverted and like a creatively logical person. But I don't think there's any hard rules. I think people are different on a day-to-day basis. I think everyone just has moods. Yeah, Tom, I'm trying to be more open about like my political opinions because I've been streaming for about like 4 or so years, but most of the time I only ever talked about like video games just because I understood not everyone wants to hear about politics, and I understood that I know that I'm not the most educated person on them. But as I've gotten a bit older and a bit more comfortable with my own opinions, I've found it's like invigorating for me to have these conversations. Plus it helps me know my audience a bit more. Like I like hearing other people's opinions even if they disagree. Why do you think the alt-right is so prevalent in gaming? It's just because it's an open forum. Anyone can play video games. There are no repercussions for what you say in most online games. Whereas the alt-right, a lot of the ways they talk online would never fly in a social setting. If they were in person, those people might hold those ideologies, but they probably wouldn't show them for fear of social ostracization. Ostracization. That word. They get away with it in the gaming hemisphere is my point. They're allowed to do it because no one stops them. Ostracization. You know what I mean. Being outcasted. If you're a blatant bigot in person, people aren't going to want to talk to you. Worse yet, you might get, you're going to get thrown out of the library. But if you're a bigot and an asshole in a video game, all people can really do is mute you. Generally. There are games like TF2 where you might get vote kicked, but even then, depending on who's the server, if you queue up with all your alt-right friends, you might be able to curb the vote. It's just... Plus... honestly, I think gaming is just a way... It's just a place people... The average gamer is like a younger, maybe not so politically active person to begin with. So just from like a probability standpoint, the average gamer is more likely to not be politically educated more so than, the average person off the street. It's probably the best explanation I can give. People don't call it out. When someone's a bigot and an asshole online, everyone looks away. And if you try to be the person that says, hey, you're being a bigot, shut up, or leave, or we don't want you on the server, there's only so much you can do. Because a lot of people just don't want to get involved. They're like, I don't want to start something. It's just the nature of the I don't know, the medium. And honestly, I think that's something we should be worried about, because there's probably a lot of kids being indoctrinated into alt-right and like really deep dark web shit just because they, used 4chan too much or they played on like the wrong community servers for too long. The same thing as people getting brainwashed by cable news. They go on these forums where they get brainwashed by people convincing them that, you know, the world's against them. And that they gotta lick the corporate boots to troll the libs. Because logic's just thrown out the window for a lot of people. And truthfully, I don't know what the solution to that is. It's something that worries me. I don't want gaming to be synonymous with being bad, with bad people, with bigoted people, with non-inclusive people. But how do you curb that behavior? There's only so much you can do to educate the public, and you can try to be like the nice person. You can try to be positive and spread a good message, but free speech has its negatives, which is just you can't stop people from having their forums until they start, you know, doing illegal shit. Then maybe the government steps in. You know, if they're like, if your forum's being used for domestic terrorism, that might be a little different. But a couple of 14-year-old white kids trying to get a rise out of Twitter, like, where's the line drawn? Like, how, like, there's only so much you can do to curb that behavior. Like a couple of kids talking behind the locker room, you can't, you know, you can't monitor everything. Yeah, it's just one of those modern problems. All you can really do is try to educate people to be better. Just give people the resources to be educated. You debate them politely. I mean, I get what you mean. My problem is just that there's so many people that go into conversation with no intent to change their own opinion if they find that it's wrong. When I go into conversation, if I feel that I try to observe the times where I'm wrong or I don't have the facts, and I try to adjust my belief system and my behavior. I try to, if I feel like, damn, you know what, that person knows more about this, I should go read into it. There are a lot of people I've talked to that are just talking to prove that they're right. And they're not talking to hear the other side. And that's what the modern political hemisphere is. It's sides talking to prove that they're right and not to hear why they might be wrong. What are you talking about? Oh wait, you're adding someone else. My bad. I said dark web just because I couldn't think of a second example, but what I meant was like unregulated forums where anything can be said, and the primary content that's posted there is all, you know, circle jerking or bigotry, or making light of really bad situations. Or treating, you know, the suffering of others as, you know, just points between... I'm speaking too broadly here. I'm gonna reel myself in and just say it's a conundrum. A conundrum of like... I don't know. Young internet users aren't going to be able to discern between what's a good place to be and a bad place. And sometimes, like, it's not until it's too late, till they have, like, bad influences. you think there will be a rise in support for progressive policies and politicians in America, like AOC and Bernie Sanders, anytime soon, or in the run-up to the next U.S. election? I hope so. I think there's definitely a growing scene for progressive ideology, which makes me optimistic that over the next decade, we'll start to see a lot of mainstream progressives getting voted in. I think it's totally possible, but it's not something... That's something that it has to happen before you can, like... You can't just say it's probably gonna happen. You have to see it happen to verify it, you know what I mean? Like, I can't sit here and say, yeah, in 20 years, progressivism is gonna be mainstream. But I certainly hope that it will be. I think with the rise of social media, and with social media being more careful about what's allowed to be posted, you know, with more fact-checking happening, with more standards being held for what our politicians post, in conjunction with, like, younger voters coming out more and more, I think, yeah, progressivism will be on the rise. And I hope it's like a healthy form of progressivism, where it's, you know, trying to fix the problems of the system as opposed to just complaining without providing meaningful solution. I don't know if the next presidential election will see one with, like, a real... Like, I don't know if we're going to see a real progressive candidate. I love Bernie. I feel like he's going to be too old to run. People said that about 2020, but I feel like 2024, I can't see Bernie running again. I don't know if AOC will be old enough to, and even if she was, I don't know if she has a big enough, what would you say, like, following, per se, to really get the nomination. If by some miracle AOC did manage to have that kind of pull, I would be receptive to voting for her. I'm not going to put my weight in there just because I don't know enough about AOC. And, you know, 4 years down the line, who knows what she'll be running on. But I know that the AOC types of politicians are the ones that I want to see running. And yeah, there is concern of her not being old enough, but I would counterpoint that with the rise of the internet and resources on political information, I think the standard for how old you have to be in office is lowered. I don't think you have to be 40 or 50 or 60 to hold office anymore. I think, yeah, before the internet, when, like, you had to get a literal college education to be a politician, I could see why people would be concerned about 40 or 30-year-olds running. These days, I imagine the consensus is going to change. Still, I doubt it's going to be AOC. It's probably going to be someone like it's probably going to be someone like Warren, or someone that's like in their 50s, who was probably like a moderate liberal that decides to embrace, you know, more progressive ideologies. Like, if Warren is willing to go a bit more progressive and she runs in 2024, I could totally see her having a real shot at it. As a progressive. I could see her having a shot even if she doesn't move in a progressive direction, but I sincerely hope she does. Because I could... Like, I would have been happy with her had she won, but I could definitely tell a difference between her and Bernie when they were running for nomination. And I wouldn't mind her taking a couple pages from his book. But maybe it'll be someone else entirely. Who knows? I think it would be fitting for someone in their 30s to be elected. Like, if you ask me personally, I think it would actually be pretty reassuring for the country after years of feeling like the older generations were holding the country back from meaningful change. If you just ask me personally, I would love having someone younger who's politically very active being, I don't know, having a larger part in government, more than just being, you know, any one senator or congressperson. Any thoughts on the snow thing in Texas? Yeah, I think it's fucked that Ted Cruz decided to go to Cancun in the middle of it. That's what I think. I don't know enough about what actually went on in Texas. I just know they got like super froze over. Does that have something to do with climate change? I can't verify it, but it sounds like something that would be relevant to it. Maybe it'll wake a couple people up. Probably won't, but I sincerely hope people take notice of stuff like that, because that's not normal. Yeah, trans rights. Are you streaming on YouTube for good? Nah, I'm sure I'll stream on Twitch again. I don't want to overdo it on the YouTube stream just because I know people subscribed for the videos. But at the same time, I'm comfortable enough to stream here. You'll probably see a bit of both. YouTube streaming is nice just because it's a bit more of a conversation. When I go on Twitch, it's more like the regulars who have followed me for a while just checking in. But when I go live on YouTube, I get to hear more from the people that don't normally follow me. So, like, when I have these political conversations, it's not an echo chamber quite as much. Like, if I go live on Twitch and I talk about all my progressive stuff, I can have good conversations, but I might not hear as much disagreement. So I said I would end after the last match of Thunder Mountain, but I went for another one. I don't mind. But I'm gonna call it there, because I'm feeling pretty hungry. Thank you for watching, everyone. Sure, I'll go live another day sometime soon. Make sure you're registered to vote, eat the rich, and I'll probably make a video game video eventually. Just gotta finish it. But thank you to anyone that hung out and talked to me. I will see you next time. Bye-bye.